હું ત્યાં ગયા હતા ને ત્યાં પવઈથી છોકરો આવેલો છે, ત્યાં જોબ કરે છે. એને જોબ મળી ગઈ. એની વાઇફ ને ડોટર દે કેમ ફ્રોમ ઇન્ડિયા ટુ વિઝિટ, સો દે વેન્ટ ટુ Disney World, and then they went back. They will come back in May. Yeah. So Bhagavan is saying that one who by the words of Sadguru and the scriptures has attained firm vairagya, has firm shraddha, the second attribute, firm shraddha, strictly observes the 8 aspects of brahmacharya. This is the third virtue. And fourth one, has affinity towards non-violence. And the fifth one, and absolutely firmly realizes oneself to be Atma, is relieved of the burden of birth and death, which hangs on over one's head. So the cycle of birth and death can relieve by these 5 steps. But relieving from the cycle of birth and death is not guaranteeing the abode of God. Right? He is relieved from the cycle of birth and death. But he will go to the abode of Devatas. And there, whatever he has earned, he will spend there. And when that spending is done, then he will come back again. And go back and come back, But to attain the abode of God, Bhagavan is telling the next thing, So this is by Purush Prayatna. Another example, if somebody knows how to swim, and he can swim the river, full river, very well, But if that same swimmer, he is okay to swim the river, he has no problem swimming the river, But now if that swimmer has to swim the ocean, can he do it by himself? Right. There he needs the boat. There he needs the grace of God. Yeah. Right. So the cycle of birth and death is similar to one who knows how to swim the river. But to reach the abode of God is the grace of God. So then Bhagavan says, this is Purush Prayatna. Then, just like a grain of rice that has had its outer shaft removed does not grow, a mukta who has virtues just mentioned is freed from eternal ignorance in the form of Maya. Now he is above the Maya. He can be a king if he wants to. And if he thinks that that is a problem, then he will not even want to become a king, and he would raise, himself, But he is still not able to swim the ocean. But he has, freed from the eternal ignorance in the form of Maya. He is thereby freed from the cycle of birth and death and attain the status of Atma realization. The Atma realization is the Purush Prayatna's end result, And in Jain belief, mainly they say that Atma realization is done by these 5 virtues, Mainly in Jain belief, they are very strong and very, sincere about that, Right. So, this much can be achieved by personal endeavor. And in Jain belief also, that when they reach to the nirvana, or what they call Siddhasila, then they become God. Right. But they do not recognize the higher God. They say that my karma has to be finished. My all the deeds have to be finished. And if it is finished, then he is liberated. And he is liberated, then he is like a God. But then how to go to the higher God's level is a whole different scenario. But they learn, from there and keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. Yeah. They think that that is the end goal. That is the end goal. So then, and then doctor decides that I want to become now a lawyer, and I want to become accountant, I want to become president. It goes on, right? And also that once you have these virtues, these five virtues, and then you pray to God, then you have extra, right? So this is what achieved by the personal endeavor. Now, in fact, God's grace is only bestowed upon one who has such characteristics. Then and then he would get God's grace. Otherwise, they will get the God's grace, but they have their own attachment to the worldly things also. There was one lady, Lakhu Charan, in the time of Samdan Bhagavan, and she had 16 bhais, buffaloes, and milking a lot of milk, and she had a lot of farmland, and she had kids. So Samdan Bhagavan, when he went there, she took care of Samdan Bhagavan very much, very nice. Every evening from the milk, the top of the milk, she would collect from the boiled milk, and make a nice cream, and put sugar in there and other thing and give it to Samdan Bhagavan. Yeah. और अब ऊपर है तो वो नहीं खाएंगे, ऊपर वाला चीज निकाल देंगे. डाइट मिल्क, स्किम मिल्क, ના ના રોગ તો ના થાય પણ વજન વધી જાય. So that Lakhu Charan, she was serving Swaminarayan Bhagavan. So after a couple of weeks, Swaminarayan Bhagavan stayed there, and then at the end, Bhagavan says, I am very happy, and you ask for something. Whatever you ask, I will fulfill. So now she did not know what is Akshardham. She did not know what is, moksha, what is liberation, So she told Swaminarayan Bhagavan that if you are very pleased with me, then my 16 buffaloes should not die. And my son should not die. Viro. His son's name was Viro. So Swaminarayan Bhagavan says, well, this is all Maya's creation. Whoever is born has to die. So ask something different and better. So she asked the same thing again. And Bhagavan says, but that is, I told you, that is not the right thing to ask, So Bhagavan says, you ask me for something different and better, And third time she says the same thing, Because people, they don't have more vision, wider spectrum, and they're happy, Well, she did it, but without this knowledge, what I'm saying. So, at the end, Swaminarayan Bhagavan says, you don't understand, but I will give you my Akshardham. Now, this is a big grace, but she does not know what is Akshardham. Right? So that is his grace, Right. Yeah. Mhm. Sure. So Bhagavan is saying, in fact, God's grace is only bestowed upon one who has such characteristics, those 5 characteristics. That's a plus factor, When one attains the grace of God, one becomes an ekantik bhakta. So that is very high level than just Atma realization. And even the Shruti is proclaimed. Niranjana paramam samyam upaiti. The meaning of this Vedic verse is that a person who is free from the blemishes of Maya attains qualities similar to those of God. He would become just same as God. There is no difference left. That is, just as God is never bound by any pure or impure karmas that he may perform, the mukta is also never bound by pure or impure karmas. ગમે તેવું કર્મ કરે તો પણ એને બંધન કરે નહીં. Right. नहीं, मगर किसी का गला काट देना, किसी को मार डालना, जो गलत है कि नहीं गलत है? तो कृष्ण भगवान ने अर्जुन को बोला दादा को मारो, वो गलत था कि गलत नहीं था? आप बोलते हैं ना गलत है. और धर्मराजा ने कुछ भी नहीं किया और फिर भी उसने सोच लिया कि मैंने सब पाप किया है, तो क्या करे? मगर बुरा भी करा तो भी भगवान के कहने से करा तो बच गया. मगर उसने कहा था और आपने सुना भी है. मगर भगवान आकर आपको बोले तो आप क्या करोगे? अरे भाई, भगवान खुद कहने को आया, फिर मुझे कॉल करने की क्या जरूरत? तो फिर भगवान कहते हैं कि लक्ष्मी जी का एग्जाम्पल देकर कहते हैं, बिकॉज ऑफ हर अफेक्शन लक्ष्मी जी समटाइम्स बिकम्स एब्जॉर्ब्ड इन गॉड्स फॉर्म, whereas on the other occasion, while remaining separate from God, she remains in God's service. So such a liberated soul becomes like Lakshmi ji to Vishnu Bhagavan. In the same manner, out of immense love, the devotee also sometimes becomes absorbed in God, and at other times he remains separate and serves God. Moreover, just as God is independent, that devotee also becomes independent. Such powers can be attained only by the grace of God, not by the personal endeavors. પુરુષ પ્રયત્નથી આ તાકાત ના મળે, આ ભગવાન ગ્રેસ કરે તો મળે. So now, when Bhagavan was saying all this thing, Nityanand Swami was thinking to himself that what if somebody does not have all these 5 qualities, then what happens? So thereafter Nityanand Swami asked, God's grace is bestowed upon one who has imbibed all of these characteristics perfectly, but what becomes of one who has some deficiency in cultivating these characteristics? Right. So, Samnar Bhagavan is giving answer two ways. One is that one who has deficiency in these attributes and not association with God. And one who has this weakness but has association with God. There are two different scenarios, right? So the one who has just these attributes, Sriji Maharaj said, if a person has deficiency in any of the virtues of Vairagya, Brahmacharya, Shraddha, non-violence and Atma-realization, then he does not attain the ultimate liberation. That is God's Akshardham. He will attain the liberation, but he will go to the limited level. He will go to the Devta Lok or some other lok, but not the ultimate liberation. Instead, he attains some other abodes of God. If he has even more worldly desires remaining, if he is even more worldly desirous and less of those attributes, he attains the realms of Devas. See, above that was, like Shvetdeep or Vaikunt Lok or Golok or things like that. But if he is more attached to Maya, then he will go to Devlok. He will go to the realms of Devas, which in the Moksha Dharma are described as being like Narak compared to the abode of God. So then he is even less fortunate. Then after being a Deva, he returns to being a human. And from being a human, he again becomes a Deva. The verse in Bhagavad Gita, Aneka Janma Sansiddha Tato Yati Param Gatim, explains that a devotee of God who has worldly desires does not go to Narak. Even though devotee has worldly desires, he does not go to Narak. Nor does he have to undergo births and death in the cycle of 8.4 million life forms. Instead, he takes innumerable births as a Dev and as a human being. Then only when he develops the previously described virtues of Vairagya, Brahmacharya, etc., does he become worthy of attaining the grace of God. He then becomes an Ekantik Bhakta of God and attains his Gunatit abode Akshardham. Then he goes to the final stage. So Bhagavan is saying then, hence, whether it takes one life of innumerable lives, only when one develops the previously described characteristics and becomes extremely free of worldly desires, does one become worthy of attaining the grace of God. And only then he will attain ultimate liberation. Without it, one will definitely not attain it. But this is all part of Purush Prayatna, Bhagavan is explaining. That he would attain the abode of God, but again, he needs all these five virtues, right? So now, there is another saint, Nrsimhanand Swami, and he wants the shortcut. So he is asking a question in a different way. So then Nrsimhanand Swami asked, is there a method by which one can eradicate all of one's deficiencies within this very lifetime? So don't have to go in again cycle of birth and death, cycle of birth and death. What can be done in this lifetime? How can we become Brahmrup in this lifetime? So then Swaminarayan Bhagavan is now saying that he has to be focused with God and his Gunatit saints. Sriji Maharaj replied, if a person becomes extremely vigilant and determined, then all of his deficiencies can be eradicated within this very lifetime. He has to be very determined, very active, that I want to do this. If his deficiencies have not been eradicated while alive, now there is another option, right? He is vigilant, he is very active, but still deficiencies are not gone yet while he alive. And if he were to become free of worldly desires and develop intense love for God during his last moments, last breath, then even in those last moments, God would shower his grace upon him and put him into the rocket. And he would attain the abode of God. So this is the shortcut that Swaminarayan Bhagavan has given. So that's why we have to practice now. If we practice now, then we would have it. This is from that Bhaj Govindam. जितनी प्रैक्टिस करेंगे इतना फायदा है. So then Bhagavan says, thus, whether after one life or after countless lives or even in the last moments before one dies, should a devotee's vrittis become intensely focused on God, no deficiencies would remain in that devotee. If that devotee is totally focused that way, then deficiencies will not be there. He will be, blessed by God, and he will be taken by God to the abode. So we have to have our vritti focused in God. Whatever we are doing, we want to remember God. Whatever we are doing, we want to do dhun, right? So then it will become natural habit, right? So that is the essence of this Vachanamrut. So anybody has any question that we can discuss on this, or everything is fine? Yeah, जाएगा ना दादा.